right. Hi, everybody. It is me, Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer. Gosh, I think I like the way I say that. The podcast lawyer. Anyway, hi, everybody. It is Thursday, the third day of December. Can you believe it is December already? Wow. It is the third day of December. And as I do every Thursday afternoon at 4 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, I am going live to answer your questions, talk about the law and podcasting and stuff going on in the space. And today's no different. Actually, I want to shout out Alex San Filippo for his article on podmatch.com from the last couple of days about cancel culture and the impact that it has or can have on the podcasting world and community and industry, and on what am I trying to say? And how we can implement some relatively simple protocols to avoid problems with cancel culture. So let's start out by talking about what I mean when I talk about cancel culture. This is the idea of sort of group shaming and withdrawing support from generally it's public figures, hosts of television shows, radio shows, podcasts, bloggers, journalists, that kind of thing, because of the content they put out or the way they share content. It's sort of in social media, it's like blocking and, as I said, sort of shaming people for what they're saying and doing out there. Ted says, thanks for the bumper music. You like it? Yeah, thank you. That was kind of fun. I just thought I'd mess with it, and I discovered a new trick with the software, so I thought I'd play with it. In any event, cancel culture, this group shaming, this blocking on social media or sort of shaming people by association. You're a bad person because you associate with that bad person who shared that point of view of some other bad person, and therefore, using sort of that I don't know what to call it, societal, social, peer kind of pressure to pressure people to stop attending to a message or stop attending to a person and their message or a business. And, it's essentially, it's sort of a boycott. And so on the one hand, look, I think we all have a right to boycott businesses we don't agree with and to not listen to a radio or a podcast host that we don't care for because of their style. I mean, I know I have spoken out against a few movie stars who I won't go see their movies because I don't care for their approach to things or the way they treat people or whatever, or because of their political views. It's recently happened with Johnny Depp, right? He, as a consequence of his court action and his ongoing battle divorce with his now ex-wife Amber Heard, he was asked not to participate in the latest movie in the Fantastic Beasts franchise. And fortunately, he had good contract and pay or play clause and that kind of thing, so he's going to be just fine. But should a person lose their job? Should a person lose their social standing because of accusations, allegations, things that happen sort of outside the realm of their public life, or in their public life? So back to the podcasting angle on cancel culture. And Alex really talks about this well. I definitely recommend going on over to podmatch.com and looking for the article about cancel culture. Full disclosure, I was interviewed, or not interviewed, I was quoted in the article. Thank you for that, Alex. Talking about I'll get to what I talked about in a second. But what I want to say is blocking or boycotting, isn't that what protest really is about? The right to speak out and give voice to our point of view. But isn't it also a right of every person to express their point of view? And yeah, maybe the boycott is the consequence of that. Maybe the cancel culture is the consequence. But I am of a view that imposing a chilling effect on media, on speech, because we don't like the message and the consequences, that cancellation as a consequence, I find it troubling. I mean, it's always been there, it's always been there. But in these days and age of social media, I think there's something different going on where people are trying to use their power as a vocal advocate or as an influencer in social media, and also use their power to take away influence from the influencers out there in somewhat nefarious ways, and I find it troubling because we shouldn't be trying to cancel points of view we don't agree with. We should be instead trying to hold up a mirror and reflect those things that we don't agree with back on themselves, so that maybe we can persuade some people, maybe we can change some minds, maybe we can highlight the ridiculousness of what the messaging out there is if it's really ridiculous. But it's happening in an insidious way. And what's happening with podcasting is podcasters are being asked to take down podcast episodes or blog posts or media content of one kind or another because maybe the guest disagrees with the host's point of view on something. An example that happened for a client of mine yeah, some years ago now, and it's really been the beginning of a crusade that I've been on to get people to use a podcast release, is a situation where a guest came on a show in its first year of life, and the host did a great interview with this guest on a particular subject matter that was of particular relevance to the host and the guest's subject matter, and but it was one point of view about a particular. It was a healthcare related thing, and this guest was a very vocal advocate of that particular point of view. Well, the show and the host of the show, as journalists, they took the show in a direction of exploring the alternate point of view on that. And it was a year or two later, and there was a sponsor on the show, and that sponsor came from the angle of that other point of view. And the host also interviewed some other experts who advocated for that other point of view. Well, the first expert got very upset and insisted that her name, her photo, and her whole episode be completely obliterated from the podcast feed and website and everything, the whole history of it. Now, I submit to you that if this guest had been interviewed for the New York Times, and later the New York Times ran an article presenting the counterpoint point of view, or even in the same article, that guest would have had some chutzpah, to use the Yiddish term, some real nerve to go to the journalist at the New York Times and say, you can't use my interview. You can't mention my name. You are not to use that photograph your photographer used of me. But in this case, this guest felt perfectly comfortable demanding that episode be taken down, and that this podcaster, this journalist podcaster, have a gap in the storytelling, the arc of the podcast's programming. And we looked at the situation, and we evaluated the merits of the various claims, which were relatively weak claims, to be honest with you. There was a claim about the photograph that was a copyright issue, and there might have been something there in the bio, but ultimately it came down to economics. The host of the podcast couldn't afford to put up the legal fight that would have been necessary in order to defend and keep the episode up. Now, this is a journalist. This is a person who firmly believed that the message that was shared in that early episode was a valid, important one, and now it was going to be gone from the record, right? What's the word I'm looking for? That's the cancellation. That's the negation of what's gone before. Revisionist history, right? That's cancel culture at work. Jay, it is actually live, and yes, you're late again. You just got here. It's 4:09 p.m. Pacific time, and I am live. Anyway, so I'm talking about this cancel culture. This hey, I don't like the way you shifted your editorial perspective, or I don't like your show anymore because you admitted that you support, I don't know, Black Lives Matter or some other kind of organization, or that you are a political angle or something like that, and demands a takedown. Well, you know what? I think that we should not. This is insidious. That's my bottom line. So should you change your behavior or your conduct or your editorial slant to avoid being a victim of this kind of thing? Should you be only choosing the safe guests that agree with you? Of course not. Of course not. The right response to voices and messages, speech that we don't like, it's not shaming or silencing or boycotting those voices and messages. It's countering with more speech. Come back at them with well-reasoned engagement, well-considered, clearly articulated opposition views, Expand the conversation, open it up. That is the fundamental principle on which a truly free society operates. Here in the United States, First Amendment, guarantee of free speech. It only extends to the government, right? Congress shall make no law abridging the the establishment or free exercise of religion, the freedom of the speech and the press, and the right of peaceful people peaceably to assemble and petition the government for redress of their grievances. That's the whole First Amendment. Now, all of that is in one place. You have the right to say what you believe. You have the right to print it in a publication and to be free to explore those points of view, whether we as a country, as a government, agree with it or not. And if you don't like what the government's doing, you've got a right to go and tell the government and say, hey, change, stop, redress those grievances. That is how we stay free. And this freedom of the press. And I think we as podcasters really ought to think of ourselves as the press, the fourth estate. If the estates that we talk about in this context are the estate of the executive branch, of the legislative branch, and the judicial branch, the fourth estate, the press, is a super important part of our independent free government because it is the one that shares the information with the people and shapes the perspective. And yeah, there is bias in the media. There's no question about it. The response to bias is more media, more speech. Point out that there's bias. Shout from the rooftops, that's fake news. I don't like the guy who sort of coined that term, but he's right. If there's bias, point at it, shine a light on it, reflect it back at itself. Make us all aware that it's fake. That is free speech. So the right to respond to the right way to respond to this stuff is not shaming or silencing or boycotting. It's counter it with more speech. Now, Joe Rogan is an example of what's going on here. What makes him popular is that he faces the controversial subjects and guests head on. He takes them on, he engages in conversation with them. Whether or not he agrees or disagrees with what they say, it's always a powerful interview because he confronts it. That's good content. That's good media. So when employees at Spotify take it upon themselves, or at least demand the right to take it upon themselves to take down an episode because some subset of the audience is offended, I'm going to use the term butthurt about some guest being on the show, that is cancel culture. And that is a terrible thing. It's going to do exactly what it says. It's going to cancel culture. Now, I want to note, what happened at Spotify was not a corporate level policy decision. This was a rebellion within Spotify's ranks. And as far as I can tell, that's it. But Spotify itself, company governed out of, I want to say Sweden or Finland or something like that, the company hasn't yet made its decisions about how it's going to approach this. If a company wants to present its point of view and only its point of view, I think that's its prerogative. Same for a person. You want to present one point of view and not be expansive and broad and bring it up, that's great. But you shouldn't then wield your power as an influencer to get others taken down and to silence other voices. To the contrary, I think you should use your voice to encourage more of that kind of communication so that all of the points of view get spread. And that's one of the promises of podcasting is we have this tremendous power at our, 3 inches from our lips, right? We have a voice, we have a platform, we have the power, what's the word I'm looking for? Platform. And, the playing field's never been more level. Someone with a few $100 can buy a microphone, hook it up to a computer, get an internet connection, and bang, send out a message, right? So that is what I'm sort of here advocating. Alex's article, again, I'm gonna recommend, go read this article on podmatch.com about cancel culture and podcasting. He points to some evidence of similar things happening in the Facebook world. I haven't seen that yet myself, but I'm sure I have, right? And again, if Facebook wants to establish a policy that we're not going to have these subjects, or we're only going to hear this side of this point of view, I think that's fine. I mean, I'm not thrilled about it. I would rather that they were more expansive and broad-minded about things, but It's fine because there's other folks out there with the other message, and they'll find a platform. They'll find a way to get it out there. I am troubled that we're sort of stratifying our society and finding I'll call it balkanizing, breaking up into little nation states of points of view and policy issues, because I think that society benefits when we all come together and talk about things rather than just shouting in our own little echo chamber about how terrible those folks over there, the other, is. That's the recipe for strife and civil war and all those kinds of things. So I think we need to do more to reach across to the other groups and hear them out and express, if not acceptance of their point of view, acceptance that they have a different point of view, I think is a reasonable thing to do. All right. Anyway, the bottom line for podcasters is we have to take steps to protect our right of free speech, our rights as press, as media. If you want to have guests on your show, whether they agree with you or not, then you should be able to. And whether they later decide they don't agree with you, you need to protect your right, your investment in your show, in producing the episodes against unreasonable demands for takedowns or pre-publication or post-publication editorial approvals, those kinds of things. You need to use a release form. That's what Alex's article is saying. Now, he offers some solutions. I have one that I recommend. It's a free podcast release for guests, for hosts to use with their guests, and I'm just providing the words. I'm not providing the mechanism. It's at podcastrelease.com. You can download it, incorporate it, use it on your booking form, use it in your email, whatever. But just get people to acknowledge and agree to the terms of that release. Podcastrelease.com. I'm not going to put it up on the screen or anything like that. Actually, maybe I'll type it in there. So it's podcastrelease.com. All right. So the bottom line is, look, we have to take our steps. You use this form. Now, it's true, even with that release form, you might end up taking the thing down. But it should be about your choice, not about being intimidated or being pressured by the fear or the expense associated with a lawsuit. And if I'm being totally candid, I mean, look, if someone signs a release but they later change their mind and don't want the episode up there, and you don't want to take it down, they could still file a lawsuit against you. I think you win quickly, and there are strategies for making it harder for them to do that. It's what we call a SLAP lawsuit, strategic litigation against public participation, and or public policy. Anyway, the point is there are ways that in many states we could actually get the case dismissed very quickly and get an award of attorney's fees right off the bat in response to that kind of a lawsuit. If you've got that contract, that release signed, you got a very strong case for that kind of thing. So you create your episode, you select your topic, your guest, the questions, and you furnish the means of production. Guess what? The content is yours. You retain control. You should retain control. It doesn't belong to the guest. It belongs to you, and you decide what happens with it. Now, you may decide that it's in everybody's best interest to take the episode down. You may decide to put something else in its place to explain why the episode isn't there. All of that is your discretion. Having the release doesn't mean you have to keep the thing up, but it means you get to decide. So Alex has other good options. He talks about using the form that his company provides to its customers. You have my form, of course. You could have a lawyer draw one up, and I'll tell you, a lot of lawyers are downloading my form to use as a starting point. If my records are any kind of indication, I can tell who's downloading my stuff. And Alex also just goes to some extra pains to say, hey, don't do this yourself. That is a risk you don't need to take. There's a free form available. There's a couple of free forms available. If you do it yourself, you're going to leave something important out, or you're going to state something in a way that might not work right, or that could leave open an ambiguity or a loophole or something like that. And he says, he goes to some trouble to say, don't rely on those online legal document vending machine services that have Zoom or Rocket in their name, that kind of, whatever their names are. Don't rely on those. That's a little like, as I like to say, getting a haircut from a vending machine. You're not going to walk down the street and see that machine with a hole in the bottom and says haircut $1. You're not going to stick your head in there, right? Why would you do that with your legal life? Okay, enough about my rant about the cancel culture. I wanted to echo what Alex has to say in his article. Once again, it's at podmatch.com. I wish I don't have the link. I'll find the link and put it in the comments later. But if anybody knows where that is, actually I can find it. I'm going to grab it real quickly and just put it in the comments. Let me find it. Pod match. Show the history. Sorry, I know this is good video, right? Watching somebody do an internet search where you're not even seeing what's on their screen. Never mind. Okay, pod match. There it is. Copy the link. Let's find it. All right. Anyway, so I want to move on to the next topic, but let me just get this reference to the article into the links so you guys can go look at it yourselves. Alex did a nice job covering the subject matter. Of course, he took his particular point of view and angle on it. I happen to be mostly in agreement with it. I'm not sure that it's all cancel culture. I mean, I think we should have a right to vote with our ears and say, I'm not going to listen to that guy anymore. But I don't think we should be in a position of trying to force the hosting company to take it down or use legal action to force episodes to go away because we don't believe that we don't like the guest that was on the show, something like that. That takes it too far. All right, let me look at the notes here. Let's see. Ted says, the guest in the example I used is losing the opportunity to make a larger statement about her disagreement with the issue at hand by demanding to be erased from the podcast history. That's exactly right, Ted. But that's their bad PR strategy to use if they choose. That's true, I suppose. But if they've agreed to come on the show and you've invested your time, energy, and resources in producing that show, should it go out of your catalog and your library of content that you've taken some pains and expense to produce? No. I think once you create the episode, they've been a participant. You brought them on. They knew what they were getting into, and that episode if you wanted to, should stay available forever. You found Ted. Thank you for finding that before me. Jay, studying about my next guest. Thank you. You hate cancel culture. Ick. No need to respond. Too late. I responded. Thank you. Next topic I wanted to bring up real quickly, and then I'm going to wrap it up. If you have questions about anything else related to the legal or aspects of podcasting, please do share them. There was an article. Let me see here if I can find it. I've got it. I'm scrolling. Including disclosures and disclaimers in episodes and show notes and what the law requires. I'm not going to go too far down into this, but I will say that there are certain regulated fields where if you are talking about, if you're giving legal advice, for example, in a podcast, and it's sort of specific kind of legal advice, you got to be careful about that. If you're giving healthcare advice, hey, everybody should eat this kind of food and always take this drug or this medicine or this supplement, and you're a doctor, guess what? You've got an obligation really to protect yourself to issue some disclaimers. Say, check with your own doctor first, and this is information only. As I often do, I will say, when you tune in to listen to me talk, you are getting general legal information, not specific legal advice. If you ask me a question in here and it's too specific, I'll say, hey, you got to check in with a lawyer on this one. Here are the general principles that apply, but the specifics might adjust that. If you're offering financial advice, investment advice, there are disclaimers that are needed. So you got to think through this kind of stuff. There are also some kinds of disclosures that are required, mostly in the area of false advertising law. If you are doing an affiliate promotion, that is, you're talking about a product and you share a link, and you're going to get paid something, you're going to get some kind of compensation for that when people use that link to purchase the product. You have an obligation under the Federal Trade Commission rules to disclose the nature of that relationship in a clear and conspicuous manner. And clear and conspicuous means right there adjacent to the message that includes the affiliate endorsement. And that's what it is. It's an endorsement, right? You're saying, hey, this is a good product. You should go buy it. By the way, I get paid if you do. And I've seen some fairly prominent folks in the podcasting space kind of play fast and loose with these rules. I don't see that there's any reason to play fast and loose. It isn't enough just to say this is an affiliate link. It isn't enough to say this is an ad. You need to be a little more specific. When you use this link, we receive a commission. Um, is probably the right way to say it. One guy says something like, um, "We get paid for qualifying purchases," or something like that, and I think that's a little vague and ambiguous, and I don't see the reason to hide the ball like that. But people will do what they want to do anyway. The other area is if there's a celebrity endorsement of a product or service, and the celebrity doesn't actually use the product, they need to say so. The assumption is that they do. If you are doing, if somebody recommends a particular, if you're recommending a product and the manufacturer has sent it to you for a review, like for example, someone sends a microphone and you do a good review of the microphone and you say you can get it over here at this link. Well, again, if they sent it to you and you don't have to return it, you should say, hey, they were kind enough to send me this unit for free. If you're returning it, then you say, hey, I'm returning this unit, or I've decided to buy it because I love it so much. That's another reasonable way. So the point is, you got to give all the material information that would help a consumer, a listener, understand what they're dealing with when they come into the scenario where they might actually choose to buy. Otherwise, there's fraud going on, right? That deception or that absence of, omission of material information can be very dangerous. All right. So let's see, what else did I want to talk about? Oh, there was another interesting article on the subject of guest booking services. A fellow by the name of Thomas Martin, who is he's a former FBI agent, who is now the president of Martin Investigative Services. And he decided that he wanted to be a guest on podcasts, and he was going to talk to the top 10 podcast guest booking services out there. And he basically wrote an article attacking those services for some of their practices and their pricing. And, look, the fact of it is, a guest booking service can't guarantee that you're going to be able to be booked. It might be that you're a lousy guest, or it might be that your message doesn't have any resonance with many of the podcasts out there. They can't guarantee. What they can guarantee is that they will do the work to try to get you booked. Just like a lawyer can't guarantee to keep you out of jail. He's going to guarantee to give you the best representation possible for the dollar, right? For the money. So this guy seems to be a little bit full of sour grapes because his messaging wasn't resonating for podcasts or something. But he sort of comes out and makes a bunch of what I think are false statements. I don't know for a fact. I haven't done my own separate private investigation on the subject, but he makes some allegations that are just sort of hard for me to believe and far-fetched. That, look, the agencies negotiate. I'm going to read some of his things. He says all 10 agencies will negotiate their fees. Well, yeah, of course. So the fact that somebody publishes a price doesn't mean that they're required to abide by that price if they want to offer you a better price, right? I mean, they're not supposed to, if you come looking for the thing they offer for the price they offer, you're supposed to abide by the price. But if they want to give you a break or negotiate a deal, that's perfectly legitimate. And there's nothing illegal or improper about it. And I think that it's disingenuous of this guy to suggest that somehow it indicates that they're dishonest or behaving improperly. Most of them have a setup fee that charges money. Look, who are you, whatever your name is, Williams or Wilson, what is it? Martin, sorry. Who are you, Mr. Martin, to tell podcast companies what they should and shouldn't charge? That's like me coming to your office and saying, you shouldn't charge me for your expenses. You should only charge me for your days if I hire you as an investigator. You shouldn't charge me for, the overnight trip you had to take. That's part of your cost of doing business, whatever. Look, if a company wants to charge a setup fee, hey, if you're negotiating fees, negotiate. That's fine. But, you shouldn't be suggesting that there's something improper about that. Companies do this all the time. If a company wants you to have there's other things. They say there's a mandatory one sheet. Don't pay for this, he says. He says there's 4 of the agencies are actually run by 3 different partners. And he says he sees this as a way of dominating the industry. Hey, have you been in a grocery store lately? How many different brands of paper towels are there? And they're all coming from the same, not just the same company, they're coming out of the same manufacturing plants in many instances. Shelf space, right? I don't think it's actually true that four of these companies are actually all run by the same three people. That's just not, I don't believe it. And I know the people who run several of these agencies, and they're not affiliated. And in fact, I've been involved on the periphery of a couple of disputes between some of these companies, so I know they're not in bed together. Um, what else? Two agencies that have some funny math. Well, again, if they want to price things in bundle for a lesser price than an a la carte pricing, that's a very common business practice. And what else? Someone wants to charge you just to have a conversation with them. Guess what? You can choose whether to pay for them or not. What else? Social media marketing. Some include it, some don't. All of this. He's basically whining about what are pretty basic, common, and legitimate business practices. And so, I am the first one to criticize a company that operates in a shady way. I've seen what these podcast guest booking companies do. I've chosen not to use them myself yet, but I think that they're perfectly legitimate businesses, and I know the people who run several, as I said, several of them, and all of them I think are smart, intelligent, thoughtful, caring people who are really trying to do right by their customers and clients. I've seen no evidence that they're shady or acting against anybody's best interests. Look, people get paid for doing the work that they do, and the results are not always something you can guarantee. So, shout out to my friends in the podcast booking space. And I will say that the article is very complimentary of Andrew Alleman's podcastguests.com, which I think is also a great business and a great service. That is a more automated directory and matching kind of an operation, more like a dating service for podcasters and guests than a matchmaking service where there's a hands-on approach by professionals, and that's great. It's more affordable and it's very good. Anyway, I think, Mr. Martin, I think you were off base, and I'll say that over at medium.com, a blogger who operates under the name Designed by Creatives came to the defense of these companies. And I was glad to see that article as well. And I want to say thank you to James Cridland over at podnews.net for calling my attention to those two articles and expressing his own point of view. Very tired of getting solicitations for have guests on your show when you have a show that doesn't have guests ever. I'm with you there, man. Anyway, that's going to be it. I don't have much else to say today unless there's someone with questions. I'm going to call it a day. It's 4:33 p.m. and I've been yakking for about a half an hour. And with that, I'll say thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. And I'll see you again next week on Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific, when the podcast lawyer speaks live. Have a great day.